People say you either have it or you don't have it, but I didn't have it for a while, but then I got it, and I got it back. I think I've always had it, but then I just realised that I did have it and I got it back. If you want something hard enough, you can achieve it. But the difference between me and them was I just wanted it more, and I always wanted to do it. I was beating up guys who were seen as the big guys in the street. I always think about what would have happened if I hadn't have continued on. First 3 rounds were the worst 3 rounds I've ever had in my career. I'd done well to survive them. My wife had family members who passed away, and I wasn't at home for their funerals because I was training. And that's the selfishness of boxing. I should have been home, and it's something that hurts me to this day that I wasn't home to be with her for these moments in her life. My name's Carl Frampton. I am a professional boxer from Belfast, and that's it.
A lot of people who are watching this, we've got a big American audience, so they might not understand what it's like to come from Belfast or Tiger Bay. Could you describe what it's like to grow up in Belfast? Okay,
I grew up on an interface. So I grew up in a loyalist area, so loyal to the Queen and Britain, that area that I was from. I grew up, so Tigers Bay was that. The next neighbourhood along beside us was the New Lodge, which was a Republican area, which wanted nothing to do with loyalism, unionism, wanted Ireland to be an all-Ireland, and wanted Britain out completely, wanted soldiers out. So I grew up right on that interface, like 1 street away from it. Right at the end of the Troubles, I grew up at the end of the Troubles, so I didn't witness everything that went on, but I seen a few atrocities. I've seen some things I shouldn't have seen as a kid. But it was just life then for me. That's where I grew up, and that's all that I knew.
It's interesting that you went on to become a fighter, and in Northern Ireland there was a lot of conflict there, a lot of fighting. The generation that came before you, maybe your mum and your dad, your uncles, did they have kind of a tougher mindset through what they've been through?
I don't know. Probably, yeah, but I think that's generations everywhere. If you look at what's going on in today's society, like a generation before our generation, they were all tougher than the kids today. So I think that's just the way it is everywhere, not just Belfast, but right across the globe, really.
I noticed you said when you was growing up, at first you was a bit shy. You used to get some bother in the streets, and that's kind of why you found yourself going to a boxing gym. What happened when you started boxing? Was that a way to kind of combat that?
Well, not really. So the real reason I went to boxing and joined the club was curiosity. I knew the local amateur club was a 2-minute walk from my house, and I wanted to see what it was like, and I didn't know what it was going to be like when I get down there. But once I started sparring, like you said, I was a quiet kid on the street, and I wasn't bullied or anything. It was just kids being kids, but I would have shied away if anybody got aggressive or tried to have a fight. I would have walked away and backed off. But when I joined the boxing club, I started to spar pretty early, and I was guys that I wouldn't have opened my mouth to in the street, I was beating up in the gym, and I liked that. And that was the real reason why I stuck it out.
So you kind of got like a sense of confidence from it.
Confidence, and it's just, I suppose it's human nature as well. You want to be better than the next guy to you. So I was beating up guys who were seen as the big guys in the street. I was far from a big guy in the street. I was a quiet kid, but in the boxing club, I was the one that was getting better of the loudmouths, and I like that. It's a bit of machoism. It's human nature, but I just liked being better than the next kid.
It relates to some of my times at school. Sometimes the hardest people are the people that never fight, but there's always that demeanour about them that they're extremely tough. And then they can be exposed and the illusion can be shattered when you actually, I suppose, put it on them, or mentally you get the kahunas, the balls, to do something about it and challenge them. When you started beating up young people, well, the young people in the ring, when you was obviously training, after that, did you carry that through your life in terms of it gave you confidence in everywhere in your life?
It gave me confidence, yes, certainly, but it didn't suddenly turn me into a kid on the street that was picking on other kids because I was beating them up in the boxing club. It just gave me a self-confidence and made me realise that you know, I can, if I can beat them up in a ring, I'm pretty sure I could do it in the street too. So it's not as if I was running around throwing my weight about or anything like that, but it just gave me a bit of a self-confidence. And boxing as well is always a sport that instills discipline. It's not just about, they tend to try to make kids, they would almost go to the point of not fighting in the street, but if you have to, you know, you're able to defend yourself. So I knew I could do that if I had to, but I was in very, very little street fights as a kid, growing up, even after I joined the boxing club.
You said curiosity led you there, and anybody who's been to a boxing gym for the first time usually remembers what it's like as they kind of walk into the doors open and they see the gym. Can you describe what it felt like when you was in there? Yeah,
I remember the old gym. It's changed a lot. It's still in the same place, but it's changed a lot since I started. And remember they used to have they got these wooden boards out, and you used to have to skip on them and stuff. But the very first night I went to the club, there was me and a group of friends came down, and I was told to kind of sit and watch. I wasn't allowed to train the first night. I was 7 years old, so pretty young. And when I was 7, I probably looked like I was 5. So the coaches were kind of a bit like, you might be a bit too young to come down. So in this day and age, I don't think you'd be able to do it at that age. I think 7's probably too young. But I went down, I sat and watched it, and I came back the next night and they allowed me to train, and that was it. I was hooked. I stayed there. I stayed there from 7 years old, and I'm currently still a boxer.
From being 7 years old to being, how old was you when you won your first world title? 20?
Ooh, I was 22, I think, when I turned pro, so I would have been maybe 26 or 7.
26, 7. At the beginning, you go into the gym and, you know, it's not guaranteed that you're going to have a career in boxing, let alone win a world title. When was the first time you realised that this might be something that I'm a little bit better than all the rest at?
I knew it was good by the time I hit about 11. Like I knew I was a decent fighter. I used to be called, like, a lot of people who didn't even know my name in Tigers Bay, they'd see me walking from my house to the boxing club, and people would say, "There's the boxer." They would know me as the boxer. So I always had that kind of image, and you know, you imagine me walking down as a 7 to 11-year-old, walking down with a little rucksack 3 nights a week, sometimes more, to the boxing club. Rain, hail or snow, and people just got used to seeing me and used to me being the boxer. Now everyone in Tigers Bay at some point, my age group anyway, would have been in the boxing club trained. Some of them would have stuck it out for a couple of years, maybe a few weeks, a few days, but I was the one that stuck it out. And I was aware probably when I was about 11, 12 that I was decent at it. And I had already a decent record by that point. I hadn't lost many fights, and yeah, I was getting a wee bit of a name and a reputation as being half decent.
You said rain, hail or snow, and you said everybody in that Tigers Bay area would at some point pass through the gym. You was the one who stuck it out, and you stuck it out for a long period of time. What made you turn up every other night?
Well, there was times I didn't want to go. My mum forced me in as well, and I think maybe she thought that she realised that it was giving me the confidence that I had. Maybe she realised that I was decent at it as well and potential career option. I don't know, but there was times where, because at times when you're very young, it seemed almost military to me, the boxing club. Like it's changed now, and how they train kids is completely different. But it was hard, and it was 3 rounds of a warm-up, 3 rounds of skipping, 3 rounds of bags, 3 rounds of pads, 3 rounds of abs and crunches at the end. That was it. Same old routine every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. So at times I didn't want to go down, and I'd rather be playing out in the street with my mates, playing football or playing, I was going to say PlayStation, I don't think I had a PlayStation, Sega Mega Drive or whatever it was then. And I was kind of pushed out the door almost at times by my mum. I resented it a wee bit at times, didn't want to go all the time, but I always made sure I did.
Somebody who's been through that kind of regime and done the same kind of sometimes boring things again and again when you don't want to, and not wanting to show up, not wanting to go. As you've been somebody who's done that for a long period of time, I'm sure in your career there's times where your motivation maybe have dipped a little bit, seeing as you're doing it so long.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a period of my career when I was about 16 to 18 where I wasn't having the most success. I was doing things that 16 to 18-year-olds do and starting to get a taste for a drink at the weekend up the park with my mates and stuff, and chasing girls and everything else that boys at that age do. And I suffered a few defeats and didn't go off the rails, but I wasn't putting in the effort. There was a real turning point in my career when I was maybe about 21. I was still an amateur at the time, but I'd lost to a guy called Kevin Fennessy in the Irish Championships. And to be honest, Kevin was not a bad fighter, but what I wanted to do, at that stage I knew it was going to be my career and I wanted to be a professional boxer. And I shouldn't have been losing to people like Kevin Fennessy. Anyway, he beat me fair and square. I went home, I was with, well, she was my girlfriend at the time, but now my wife, Christine. And I just had a talk to her and I said, look, I'm going to pack it in. What's the point of doing this if I can't beat guys like him? She kind of had a word with me and said, look, stick it out. She understood that I wasn't training how I should have been, and I was maybe putting 2 weeks of hard training in before a fight, which isn't enough. And I stuck it out, drew Kevin Fennessy the next year in the quarterfinals of the Irish Championships, training properly as an amateur but like a professional, and I stopped him, his corner through the talon, and that was a real turning point for me. I knew, like, if I put the effort in, I can do this and I can go very far. So that was like people talk about light bulb moments, that was certainly one for me.
I think everybody's got a Kevin Fennessy somewhere, a point in their life where they know they should be performing better, and it's a defining decision whether they decide to continue or they quit. Yeah. A lot of people quit. What would be your advice to people who decide, I'm going to jack it in?
Well, I didn't do it. Look, I always think about what would have happened if I hadn't have continued on, if I hadn't have had that talk with my wife, if I hadn't have rationally tried to think about why I lost to Kevin Fennessy, because I was very, very close to jacking it. I was very, very close. I was thinking about joining the army actually, and just going, and because I'd kind of put my whole life was boxing at that point. I hadn't done anything. I hadn't worked another job. I was focused on boxing, but I was losing to this guy. I was thinking, what am I going to do now? Thinking about joining the army. I ended up deciding against that, sticking it out for another year. And that year, I beat Fennessy, I beat Tyrone McKenna, and I beat one of Ireland's greatest ever amateurs, David Oliver Joyce, in the final of the All Irelands. And that was the point where I knew. But it's like people have these moments all the time, don't they? And you have to realise that very few people get that lucky, that it doesn't come without hard work and dedication, to use a Floyd Mayweather quote. But it's true, it's so true. You have to focus on things. You have to fight through adversity at times. And for that year when I was 21, I certainly done that, and I'm reaping the rewards now.
In terms of fighting for adversity, you obviously from that period of time in your life, that was one of the fights you had. Has there been any other points in your career where you've really had to bite down on your gum shield, you could say, and fight for adversity to get further on? I'm sure there has been. It's hard to pinpoint one. As a pro, I fought Josh Warrington, and I think I was probably slight favourite going into the fight. First 3 rounds were the worst 3 rounds I've ever had in my career. I done well to survive them. I done well to stay on my feet. But at that point, I got beat up in that fight, and beat up pretty bad. In my head, the whole way through that fight, I was thinking, don't get stopped, fight back here, don't let the referee try and jump in. I didn't want to get stopped. I wanted to see the final bell. I didn't really believe that I could win that fight after about the halfway point, but I wanted to stay in there and fight back and show that I've got balls, really. I'm not just someone who's going to fall and quit and pack it in. So that was another point where I was battling with my own head. I was hurt a number of times in that fight, but in my head, the objective after the first few rounds was don't get stopped. And I actually got, not too many people know about this, but I got a bash in the knee, kind of quad, in the first round. There was an exchange of punches, and I think, accidental obviously, but I think his knee has bashed mine.
I had pretty severe bruising, kind of that covered the length of my quad. And my leg was hurting. It was hurting me. I didn't want to tell the corner, so I made a decision walking back to the corner. I can't tell Jamie Moore that my leg's sore because he'll think it's an excuse for me. He's looking for him to pull me out. So I made sure that a conscious decision, don't mention your leg. But the leg was bad. It was that bad that afterwards when I went to the hospital and obviously had severe bruising about my head, I was standing at the reception in the hospital and my leg kind of caved in, and people thought, they kind of rushed around me, they thought it was something to do with my head, but it wasn't. It was just my leg was sore. But I made a decision, don't tell Jamie Moore you've got a sore leg, because he'll think that's my way of saying, please get me out of this situation. I didn't want that to happen.
And it's not a lie. You could have said, I watched that fight and you did get wobbled in the second round, and it was a tough fight all the way through. And when you're watching it, anybody in their right mind who was going through a situation like that probably would use an excuse, which is not a lie, but it is an excuse to not be there. How have you managed to create a mindset where you wouldn't even let an excuse like that?
Well, I don't know. I knew that I know Jamie and I know my coach pretty well, and I know that it's something like, I think if I was Jamie in that position, if a fighter's coming back to me saying after the first 3 rounds that he had, my leg's a bit sore, it sounds like you want out. And I know Jamie, and I know that if I had said that, I think he probably would have pulled me out. And it's about a corner and a fighter, their relationship and knowing each other. I just made the conscious decision that I'm staying in here, I'm not getting pulled out. And I didn't want to tell him, because I knew if I had have, then he would have probably pulled me out at the end of a round.
When you obviously had your Kevin Fennessy, and then you decided, I'm going to knuckle down and get on it, what was the biggest change in terms of your routine, mindset, that kind of allowed you then to push on and be as good as you should be?
Just trained harder. I always trained hard, but I was a skiver as well, someone who liked to mess about and sometimes hide behind bags and maybe not put as much effort in as I should. And I just made this conscious decision that I'm actually going to try hard here and give it a lot of effort, and that's what I've done. And the year the Fantasy beat me, like I was drinking and stuff, not a big drinker, but I was going out with my mates at the weekend. I'd have been doing that up to like maybe 2 weeks before a fight, so I knocked that in the head and maybe didn't do that, didn't drink for maybe 3 months at a time and got ready in preparation for fights. So these are just small things that I'd done, but it seemed to work. And it seemed like everybody needs a wee bit of luck in their career, but I think you have to have that attitude and that commitment and that determination and the luck as well that comes with it. And I seem to have got pretty lucky, and things just kind of fell into place after that.
So after that, it kind of started to work. After you knuckled down, obviously you applied the hard work. I mean, you must have worked really hard to get to where you've been, but then things started to fall into place as well, you would say.
Yeah. No, that's exactly the way it happened. It's not. I think that everybody at the top will talk. Look, it takes commitment, it takes hard work and drive and determination and sacrifices and everything else. But I think there has to be an element of luck in your career, and things have to fall into place at the right time. And I suppose the more you train and the harder you work, the luckier you get sometimes. But things all have to fall into the place at the right time, and they have for me. And I've done a lot in my career. I've been very proud of the things that I've done in my career, but I still believe there's more to give. And that's why I'm in it. I contemplated retiring after the Josh Warrington defeat. At that point, I'd done more than most people could ever dream of as a boxer, a 2-weight world champion, unified, Ring Magazine Fight of the Year. But I didn't want to go out on a loss like that, and I knew there was more to come. I knew I could still become a world champion, and that's the reason why I'm still hanging around this game.
How do you still have that level of kind of aspiration, especially as you've done it? I mean, Ring Magazine Fighter of the Year, you had 2 fights with Leo Santa Cruz, one in Brooklyn and one in New York. You had a pay-per-view with Scott Quigg. You've reached heights that other British fighters and other world fighters probably never get to. How do you still have the commitment to say, I'm going to be a world champion?
I want to be known as a great, and look, I'm already, if you'd have granted me a wish at the start of my professional career and said, you're going to win a world title, but you're going to lose it in your first defence, I think I'd have taken that at the very start of my professional career. So I've went on to do more than I ever could have imagined at the very start, but I still know there's more. 2-weight world champion. I know I can become a 3-weight world champion. My next fight is against Jamel Herring for the chance to become a 3-weight world champion. One of the only British fighters to ever have done it. The only Irish fighter to have ever done it. I think that if you look at the Brits that have done it before, I think I probably rank as number 2 in terms of who has become 3-weight world champions. It's a chance for me to become a great. It's a chance for me to potentially put myself into the Hall of Fame, and that's why I'm doing it. You know, I know my kids are proud of me and they will be proud of me when they grow up, but I imagine what it would be like. You know, I'm very proud of my dad. Me and my dad are best mates, and I love him dearly, but imagine my dad had been a 3-weight world champion. How proud I would have been of that. So a lot of the reason is for my kids. I want them to talk about me. I want the people of Belfast and the people of Northern Ireland to remember me fondly. And this is part of the reasons why I do it.
I think people who know boxing know how much you've achieved already, and I totally get what you're saying. Like with the likes of Joe Calzaghe, and other great British fighters that have, Carl Frampton, that have gone on to achieve stuff which is just that extra level. Yeah. And you're speaking about legacy, really. Yeah. And is that something that's massively...
Legacy is so important to me, and I want people to... I don't want to be, you know, a flash in the pan type where people stop or forget about me after a couple of years. I want to go to pubs in 30 years' time in Belfast and someone buy me a pint and say, I was at that fight, I remember that fight in New York you had with Leo Santa Cruz, or I was there when you beat Jamel Herring to become a 3-weight world champion. I want people to remember me like that. Not just to buy me a pint, but just to remember me in them sort of terms, and that's what I'm aiming for, that's what I'm striving for, and I'm very, very, very proud of the support I get. Never imagined that I would have had the support that I have at this point, but I just want to keep pushing. I want to do it for them, I want to do it for myself, I want to do it for my family. There's so many motivational factors for me, and that's why I'm doing it.
Sometimes in your career, you've gone into a situation of a fight as a bit of an underdog. Thinking the first Leo Santa Cruz fight, obviously going to somebody else as well. He's not American, but he fights over in America. And Scott Quigg, pay-per-view, but fighting on a matchroom show, not being a home fighter. Do you enjoy being an underdog?
There's no pressure when you're an underdog. People, you know, all the pressure's on the favourite because he's expected to win. I don't mind being an underdog, if I'm being honest. I think the most pressurized situations you are in as a fighter is when people expect you to win. The most pressurized situation for me was when I fought for my first world title against Kiko Martinez in Belfast in a purpose-built arena. I could see from the ring, it was outdoors, 16,000 people. I could see Tigers Bay in the distance from the ring. It was the perfect venue. I'd already beaten Kiko for a European title. I'd stopped him in the 9th round. And people look at that and think, well, he's knocked him out in the 9th round, he's definitely going to beat him this time. But Kiko had went on and won a world title after I'd beat him. He had momentum on his side. The fight that I stopped him, it was a brutal fight up until I did stop him. So I knew all these things, but people just expected me to win. The pressure on me and the pressure on my shoulders in that fight was absolutely huge. But I had to be switched on, and I think that was probably one of my best performances, and a forgotten performance really. How controlled it was under them circumstances, and under that, the amount of pressure that was piled on my shoulders was ridiculous.
How do you deal with the pressure? Because boxing is one of them careers where one fight can, you know, massive setback or it can be over. So how do you deal with that pressure?
People deal with it differently. People say, you hear this old saying, you know, pressure is just for tires, or pump tires up. But pressure can be used as a tool and a motivational factor, and I use it as a motivational factor. And some people will drown under that pressure. the weight of the pressure and the weight of expectations, but I feel like I like to rise to the occasion. And some of them pressurized situations that I've been in, I think have been some of my better performances. So I don't know how I cope with it. I really don't know. I'm always focused on the opponent. I'm focused on the fight. I was out running last night, and I decided last night I wasn't going to listen to music, because when I don't listen to music, I can think about the opponent that I've got to fight next, Jamel Herring. So I'm going through in my head shots that I think are going to work. I'm playing out how I think I'm going to get rid of this guy. I'm playing out different scenarios in the fight. I don't know if everybody does stuff like that, but that's something that I do, and it helps me cope with everything that comes with being under pressure in these situations.
It sounds like you're talking a bit about visualization. So before you've gone into the ring, you're living the moment in your head, and you're playing it out. When you won your first world title, to drag you through that fight, did you visualize the end of it, or? Yeah,
loads of visualization, and visualized certain shots and certain scenarios that I thought were going to happen in the fight and crop up. Visualized having my hand raised at the end. There was a guy, when I was an Irish amateur boxer, a guy called Jerry Hussey, sports psychologist, used to talk to us, and he was big into visualization and talking about that, and I always enjoyed his chats, and I always enjoyed the sports psychology side of things. But when we spoke to Jerry Hussey, I was with an Irish squad. There was maybe 10 other lads around. Some of them didn't really take it that serious. It was always messing about. I was always trying to listen and take it in, but it wasn't that serious because there were so many people around. But it was always something that I remembered from my high performance days as an amateur. Visualization is a key. You hear top sportsmen talking about it all the time, but it's something that I do. I done it last night on the run, and I'm sure I'll do it plenty of other times before this fight happens.
I think for the average person, the most normal person would think, in terms of their visualization, somebody says they're going to throw you in a ring, you're going to have a boxing fight. People start visualizing the negative side of it, the pain, the fear, the losing, the loss. Has there been any time in your career where them doubts have creeped into your mind?
You have constant battles with your own head all the time, and when you start doing that, of course these things creep into your head too, but it's about trying to get them out as soon as possible. People have doubts. Everyone has doubts, and doubts creep in at certain times, but it's about what you do with that doubt, and you try to deal with it rationally. You try to think about it, and when I visualize things, when the doubts start creeping in, I try to get back to thinking of the positive things. And how can you do something if you can't actually visualize doing it in your head? How can you throw a certain combination if you can't actually visualize that happening in a fight scenario? And these are just things that I've done and picked up over the years, and I continue to do it, and I will continue to do it for as long as I'm a boxer.
And I suppose you could apply that to any point of life. If it's the job that you want, or the partner that you want to get, if you can't see yourself with that person, then what's the realistic chances of you actually actioning it and doing it?
Absolutely, and yeah, like you said, it can be applied in everyday life, really. If you have a goal to set, you must visualize that and to get to that end target. And it's what I do in boxing. It's what I will do as a boxer, but I don't know what I'm going to do after boxing, but I'm sure it's going to be a tool that I use in the future as well.
You spoke about sacrifice. I know you used that word maybe a couple of minutes ago, and sacrifices that you have to make. What are some of the sacrifices you've had to make to get to where you've
Sacrifices I've made. I've made so many sacrifices. Obviously, as a boxer, I go into training camps. I spend so much time away from my family. I've missed a large portion of my two kids growing up. I've missed a large portion of their lives because I've been away, and that's something that hurts me, and it's something that I feel strongly about. But these sacrifices, and that sacrifice in particular, it's something that I do to better their life. It's not just for me, it's for us all, it's for my family, and I do that because I would like to have a comfortable life. I would like my kids to have a comfortable life. I would like their kids to have a comfortable life. And these sacrifices that I'm making now go part of the way to potentially making that happen. So, I've missed things that have hurt me, and I shouldn't have done it as well. I realized I should have been at home at times where For example, my wife had family members who passed away, and I wasn't at home for their funerals because I was training. And that's the selfishness of boxing. Realising that now, I understand that there's a fine line. I should have been home, and it's something that hurts me to this day that I wasn't home to be with her for these moments in her life. But that was the selfishness of it, and that was, you hear sportsmen talking about being selfish all the time to get to the very top. My whole attitude has changed a wee bit, and my whole outlook has changed a bit the last few years since I've teamed up with Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis. But at that time, I was extremely selfish. I don't think I needed to be that selfish. Obviously, top sportsmen need to be selfish to get to the top, but there's a line, and I crossed that line. And it's something, I've apologised to my wife many times about this. It's something that still plays on my mind, but things like that I've done. I've done it for whatever reason.
I think that obviously we're speaking about sacrifices, and you know, one of the massive motivating factors for your sacrifice is to provide for your family and your family's family. But I think you're right, there is a balance, but when you're trying to reach the top of your field, you feel like you have to give 100 all the time, and it's hard to give 100 in all areas of your life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just feel like I feel like I should have made different decisions at that time. You know, talking about that funeral in particular, 2 funerals actually. I feel like I should have made the decision. I was in camp, I was in London. I should have made my own decision, went home for a day, came back into camp. There would have been no harm me doing that. It wouldn't have affected my performance. It wouldn't have affected anything going into the fight for me to have one day off. I could have made it up somewhere else. But these are decisions I made at that time, and you know, I'm still not happy about it, but I done that.
You said make your own decision. How important is it to have the right people around you to influence you and help you make the right choices?
Extremely important. I've got, at this point in time, I'm with Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis as my trainers. 2 of the best people I know. Boxing men, good men, family men, people that would do anything for you. They would go out of their way to do anything for someone else who needed a little bit of help. I wish I was with these people for my whole career. I genuinely wish I had been with them. Since I turned pro, I wish Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis had been my coaches. I've been training with them now for about 3.5 years. They're 2 of the best people I know. They've got my best interests at heart, and they're good people. It's another reason, another motivational factor that I have in my career and going forward is I want to win a world title with them. All the world titles and the big things that I've done in my career have been with my previous team. I want to do this with Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis, and I'm determined to do it.
In terms of your journey so far, what's probably been the most emotional part of it for you?
Most emotional part of my journey so far? I was split from my last team, and moving on and moving to a new team really. And before I moved to a new team, not really knowing what I was going to do. Losses as well have been pretty emotional for me. It's been hard to overcome defeats, especially the Warrington fight in particular, more so than the Santa Cruz fight. And I think it was probably because I'd already beaten Leo, that fight didn't hurt me as much as the Warrington loss. That's been, them 2 things have been emotional for me, and you know, I've been strong enough to get over them and deal with them, with help as well from my wife, who's always been there for me. She has this, you know, people who know her around Belfast, she has this persona as someone she's funny, she's good crack. People like her, but she has this persona, and I think this image is someone who doesn't really care too much about anything, but she does. And she's helped me through so much in my career.
That support system, you can tell when we're speaking that families are a massive motivational factor for you.
Absolutely. My family and my kids, my wife, my mum, my dad, and everybody who's been there and helped me, and everybody Nigel, Travis, Jamie Moore, my old amateurs, Cooper McClure, amateur trainers, Cooper McClure, Billy McKee, an old guy called Joe Farrell who's no longer with us. All these things and all these people who have helped me along my career, they're absolutely motivational factors for me to succeed.
You spoke about coming back from losses and also change as well. Change can be a big thing which disrupts people, and change sometimes can be a hard thing to come back from. Do you believe in failure, even with like losses on your career like that, or is it part of the process? Is it part of the journey?
I think it's part of the process. There's not too many people who go through their career undefeated as a boxer. Floyd Mayweather won, Joe Calzaghe another one, but Rocky Marciano another one. But there's not too many people that can do that. I think that failure at times and defeats can be a good thing because you can learn and you can improve from them. Prime example, the Kevin Fantasy situation for me, although it was as an amateur, I feel like that was a real turning point in my career where I improved and I pushed on and I succeeded after that. So I think that there's moments that happen in people's career that as defeats or failures, whatever you want to call it, if you learn from them and improve, then it'll still be classed as a defeat, but it's not really a failure then if you're learning and improving from them situations. David Hay, another prime example, lost to Carl Thompson in a fight, went on to become unified cruiserweight champion, went on to become a heavyweight champion. These are massive moments in people's careers that either define them or break them.
You spoke about goals as well. That's one thing I wanted to touch on, about you have a goal, you outline it and then you achieve it. There's a lot of people out there who probably have goals but have no idea on how they're going to go about achieving them. You're somebody who's achieved your goals and you've got further goals from now, but what advice would you give people who are trying to achieve goals? I
think short-term goals, it's always good to have a long-term goal. People always talk about in boxing not to get too carried away. For example, my last fight, I fought a guy called Darren Trainer who I was expected to beat, but the real goal was Jamel Herring, because this was a fight to get me ready for Jamel Herring. So people say, is it important not to look past Darren Trainer and focus completely on Jamel Herring? It is important to focus on Darren Trainer for that specific fight, but it's always important as well to have your eyes to the future for the end goal, which is Jamel Herring. So you need to have short-term goals, but you need to have a long-term goal as well. My long-term goal was always to become a world champion. Things change as well as your career develops and progresses. So when I became a world champion against Kiko Martinez, my next goal was to defend it. My next goal was to become a unified champion, which I done and I succeeded. My next goal after that was to become a two-weight world champion, succeeded in that. And my next goal is now to become a three-weight world champion. So although before my last fight, Darren Trainer, that was the goal, to beat him, the long-term goal was always Jamel Herring and becoming a three-weight world champion.
You've had some massive highs in your career, in terms of achieving your goals. Like, you set out to achieve a goal, you achieve it. And I always wonder, because I've not reached the same level of success as you or some other people, but once you get to that goal, you reach that high peak, what's it like adapting and coming back down to normal life and then getting on with the next goal?
I think everyone is probably different, but I'm someone who likes normal life. I like routine as well. I like being around my wife and my kids and my family and being normal for a while. It's good for me. I don't mind it. I don't mind that your head's in the clouds for a while after you do something like go to Brooklyn as an underdog and beat Leo Santa Cruz and become the first ever two-weight world champion from Northern Ireland. Your head's in the clouds and people are praising you and tapping you on the shoulder and it's praise, everywhere you go. But I like to settle down and I like to be around my family. They're the most important thing in my life, you know what I mean? Boxing isn't the most important thing in my life. It's very important to me. It's something I want to succeed at and I have succeeded at. And I continue to have goals in boxing, but my family are number one and I always know that. So after achieving a goal or achieving success, I love nothing more than chilling out and doing absolutely nothing with my family, watching movies, going to the cinema, eating crap food, and just doing the things that families do together.
It's really kind of not lucky but humbling that you've got that grounding, that you can go to the top and actually the thing that you want to do the most is just a normal part of life.
Yeah, no, and I think that a lot has to do of where I grew up in Belfast, and working class people with a working class attitude. The support I have is because I still have the same beliefs that I did as a kid growing up. If I got too big for my boots and constantly had my head in the clouds, I wouldn't have a tenth of the support that I do in Belfast. And people, I think, like to see me as one of their own, which I am. I'm no better than anyone else. I'm just a normal person who's tried hard and succeeded. And people like that. But being from Belfast, and are similar to, like Manchester's similar to Belfast. They don't like people to get above their station. Liverpool, Glasgow, these are all similar sort of cities. And if you get too big for your boots, the city will let you know and they won't get behind you.
You said about your beliefs, and I think that, this might be an on-the-spot question, but I'm just wondering, what are some of them kind of core values and beliefs you've had from an early age which are still with you today, which keep you who you are?
I love family. I love the closeness of my family. Even like my mom and dad, it's different generation, like generationally things change, but me and my dad are like best friends, but I don't think I've ever given my dad a hug in my life, ever. But that's just a generational thing. That's nothing to do with him or me not loving each other or anything. But with my kids, my relationship's different now. I'm hugging them and kissing them all the time. I love that. The aspect of charity is always very important to me, and I think that always being from Tigers Bay, it's something that I always remember, that people who don't have much are always very charitable to other people. Even the small fact of people knocking your door, looking a bit of milk or sugar for tea if they don't have it. This stuff happened to me when I was a kid. So it's just something that I grew up with, and it's something that I've always wanted to keep, and I try my best to stay like that.
One of the questions I want to ask is, in terms of the characteristics of your mind that have allowed you to go and achieve what you have, people would say, okay, so what would be the main characteristics? It could be something like resilience or consistency or confidence, but what are the main things that you have about you that have allowed you to go on and be successful?
The main things about me is probably determination and self-drive and motivation. There is times where it's the weather is getting pretty shit at the minute. It's pretty cold at the minute in Manchester, and there's times where at night time it's getting dark early. I don't want to go out running. I don't want to be running the streets. I don't want to be doing sprints up hills. But I do it because I've got this drive. That's probably the main thing for me, is drive and determination and wanting to be better than the next man. There's not too much that I would put myself into that if I didn't win, I would be, if we there's a table tennis table down there now, like if we got that out now, like I'd want to smash you, even though I'm not a professional table tennis player. But that's just me, that's just my head. I want to win at everything. The circuits we were competing in today, I'm wanting to continue to go. We normally do 6 rounds, I wanted to do 8 today. And I wanted to say, I asked the question as well to a couple of people. Now we've done 6, you can stop now if you want, or do you want to do the extra 2 that we'd already planned? And everybody picked the extra 2, so that was me kind of having a bit of a, didn't matter to me if they stopped at 6 rounds, but I just wanted to see where they were at, and it was good that they all done that, and I was happy that they did.
There will be some people who listen to that and they will say, I just don't have that inside me. I don't have that self-drive. I don't have that winner's mindset. I don't want to win at all costs. People don't have it. They might want it. How would they get it?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think people say you either have it or you don't have it, but I didn't have it for a while when I was messing about and losing to people like Kevin Fantasy that I've spoken about. But then I got it, and I got it back. I think I've always had it, but then I just realised that I did have it, and I got it back. I don't know. It's a state of mind, really. And if you want something hard enough, you can achieve it. There's so many fighters, even from Belfast that were way more skilled than me as a kid growing up. There was so many better fighters than I was as a kid, 11 to maybe 16 in Belfast coming up. But the difference between me and them was I just wanted it more, and I always wanted to do it. Apart from that little blip that I had that I spoke about, but I quickly got it back, and I realised that, you know, I'm good at this, and I can make a career out of this. And you know, I've done it, and it's something that I'm very proud of.
Hard work, dedication, and want could drive you through skill.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's hard work and dedication. It's something that I almost hate saying it, because Floyd Mayweather almost made it his own saying, hard work, dedication. But it's true. Like, I'm a pretty skillful fighter, but that didn't come naturally. It was graft that got me to be where I am. There's so many more naturally talented fighters than me in Belfast when I was a kid growing up. So many more. But I just had something different that they didn't have. I had a different mentality, a different mindset, and I pushed on and strived for more. And that's the only difference. If these kids with the talent had the mentality of me, they'd be unbelievable fighters, but they didn't.
It's a shame.
It is a shame. There's kids now, and I know people, there's people who beat me as amateurs, and they're living off it. They're in the pub with their mates, having a pint. I beat Carl Frampton when I was a kid. Well done, but so what? Look what I've done since. Look what I've achieved in my career, and you're still telling your mates about the time you beat me when we were 12 years old or whatever. But it is a shame. There's so many wasted talents, not only in boxing, but in world sport, really, and in different fields as well. But boxing is full of people who could have been.
And that would have never been good enough for you?
No, I wanted more. I had a different mentality, and even when I was playing football as a kid, like, my mates used to hate me because I was always on them, like shouting, like just falling out with people all the time, because I hated people. You know, if we lost a football match when I was a kid and you walk off the pitch, and I'd be unhappy for a number of days, and it always baffled me why people would go into the change rooms and they'd be laughing. I'm like, fucking get a grip, like, give yourself a shake, you know what I mean? What's wrong? We just lost this match because you weren't trying and you're in here laughing. It was just something different about me. I always wanted to win.
Do you know, if you're in the gym, and obviously you've been in the gym with people today, and you're on about people trying, and you see people not pulling their weight, how does that make you feel?
There's a kid in this gym, and I'll not mention his name. He wasn't here today, but he's the most talented kid in this gym, most talented fighter that we have. His skill set is far superior to everyone else's, but he slacks a bit at times. And I think there was a point there, he's had a fight recently on Sky TV where he kind of had to win the fight, and he won the fight, and he won it well as an underdog, as a massive underdog, because people didn't know his ability. I always knew his ability, and I knew what a fighter and how good he could be. And he won this fight, and he's been in the gym training properly since that. And I think that's his Kevin Fantasy moment that I had. I think this is his one. And he's been in training. I had a yarn with him as well, and I said, you're so talented, you're a much better fighter than I am, but you just don't train as hard as me. Martin Murray spoke to him, who's another fighter who's achieved stuff through hard work and dedication, and not being naturally talented or having a natural gift, just grit and hardship and like grafting all the time. And we had a conversation with him, and it seems to have switched something on in his head, and it happens all the time. So I'll not say the kid's name, but I'm delighted for him, and hopefully that moment where he fought live on Sky TV and beat someone who he wasn't meant to beat, I think that's going to be a real turning point in his career, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind he can become a world champion.
I think with what you're saying, I suppose you've installed some of your expectations into him, but you have to have them expectations of yourself, that self-drive you was talking about.
You have to have it in, and he's surrounded by people who are... Jack Catterall fought on Saturday, and he's in here doing a circuit with us today with bad hands. His hands are sore. But Jack's someone who's determined to become a world champion. There's people who have it, and they have it in abundance. There's other people like the guy I'm talking about, who needs it dragged out of them. And when they do get it dragged out of them, they can succeed and achieve so much. And I think that this guy will go on to achieve a lot in this game.
I'm going to just read some words out, and it's basically kind of what these words mean to you. Just kind of expand on them. Not an exact definition, but what the words mean to you, just expand on that. So the first one is something you've been talking about, is dedication.
Dedication means, for me, dedication means drive, determination, staying at something, not giving up when things get rough, not giving up when you've got a defeat, not giving up when personal issues are affecting things outside of the game, just driving on and always having that end goal. That's, for me, is dedication.
Pain.
Pain is something, and I'm pretty sure that most sports people will say this, especially most boxers who get to the top, it's temporary, and it's something that will go away eventually. I've had so much pain in my career. I won a fight 2 fights ago with 2 broken hands. Pain is something that is in your head, and your mind will always give up before your body will. And pain is just something you have to deal with. Everybody deals with pain in different ways. I feel like I can deal with it better than most, and it's because of my determination. If you come over and nip me now, like, my pain threshold isn't that big, but there's something in my determination and my mentality that makes me try to forget about it and just keep battling on.
Against the odds.
Against the odds is, well, who makes the odds? Bookies get it wrong all the time. I've been underdogs. I've been an underdog in a few situations. The bookies have got it wrong. It's about a self-belief and having, we're referring back to things here, but a determination and a drive. Who makes the odds? Doesn't matter who makes the odds. They may have got it wrong. It's about what you know and what you know you can achieve. And I've won as a big underdog, and a number of times as an amateur and as a pro.
Resilience.
Resilience. Coming back and keep doing it, and having, I suppose, a determination again. And all these words, they'll all come back, and they'll all can be used for different scenarios. But resilience is just drive, determination, commitment, never say die attitude, fighting through adversity, never giving up. Josh Warrington fight for me, I had to be resilient, because if I wasn't resilient, I was getting stopped. The referee was stopping it, or my corner was stopping it. Resilience is all those things put together.
Excuses.
Excuses. People have excuses. Not everybody goes into a fight. I would say that very few people go into a fight 100% fit, no matter what they tell you. You listen to every press conference before a fight, and they say, I'm the best shape of my life. I'm 110% ready. And people always say that, but this is a hard game. Niggles occur and happen all the time. You're going into that fight to win the fight. I'd say 99% of the people aren't in 100% tip-top condition. They could be in a better condition. And people have excuses all the time. It's about whether you say them. It's about whether you give that excuse. I've talked about the injury to my leg with Josh Warrington since the fight, but I left it a long time. I didn't say it after the fight. I didn't say it weeks after the fight. I left it for a long time because he won that fight fair and square. And if I had have made an excuse and said, well, I had a sore leg, people would have just said, you're full of shit, an excuse. So it is what it is.
Mindset.
Mindset as a fighter has to be, you have to be single-minded, you have to be focused, you have to have that goal at the end, you have to be focused on the end target completely, and there may be different bumps on the road and things that knock you off track for a while, but it's about getting back, and it's about having a strong mindset to know that it's going to take, things that you want in life won't come easy. Very few things do. So having the mindset to know that there's going to be ups and downs and bumps along the way, you're going to have to get through them to succeed, and that happens in not just boxing but everyday life.
Perfection.
Perfection. I don't think there is such a thing as perfection in boxing. Floyd Mayweather may disagree, but I don't think there's such a thing as the perfect fighter. I think you can always improve. If you feel like you are the perfect fighter, if you feel like you throw a combination the perfect way, then you'll think that there's no room for improvement. There's always room for improvement, and that's what makes a fighter a better fighter.
Failure.
Failure is something that can be seen as a negative or a positive. In that instant when you fail, it's certainly negative and you're down in the dumps. Sometimes people go as far as being depressed from failure, but it's about using that failure to your advantage, understanding why you failed, and trying to implement things that won't allow that failure to happen again.
Risk.
Risk is something that people don't take enough risks in this game anymore. And again, a fighter that I've mentioned a number of times, Floyd Mayweather, the Floyd Mayweather effect, where people want to have this undefeated world record. Risk is something that you have to weigh up risk versus reward, and sometimes people have to take risks to benefit their careers. For example, if you're not a ticket seller, you need to put yourself in the position where you're fighting someone you're not meant to beat because you're not a ticket seller. The promoters aren't going to look after you. You go on the TV, you beat someone you're not meant to beat, you beat him. That's a risk, and that's a risk worth taking. I think that what boxing can do and take from UFC is they don't get carried away with these undefeated records. If you lose a fight in the UFC or the MMA world, if you've given it your all and you've been in an exciting fight, they're going to bring you back. They don't care about a defeat in your career. Taking risks in boxing, there's very few do it, and I think that the people that do it, I've taken risks in my career, and other people have done that as well. People respect that, and it's about taking the right risks at the right time.
Quality answer. I've just got two more questions. One word it relates to you a little bit more, is a champion.
A champion isn't just someone who wins a world title. A champion is, I think, a man of the people, and someone who wins a world title and still has a relationship with the people that he always had a relationship with, the people who helped him get into that position. Muhammad Ali, for example, prime champion, someone who was a man of the people, someone who was adored throughout the world for his beliefs and the things that he'd done. World champion, yes, but when you say champion to me, it means so much more than just being a guy who's won a world title. You have to relate to the people, and people like him certainly did.
And then the last question I want to ask you is, obviously you're going to have a big year next year, but there's going to be a lot of people going into next year and thinking what's going to happen for them. What would be the best piece of advice you've got for somebody going into a new year?
That's a hard thing to deal with. I worry about people's mental health. I worry about people who have small businesses, who have been massively affected by the pandemic and different restrictions throughout the world. It's a genuine worry for me. I don't want to be someone who is seen to be a preacher who's preaching to them. Everyone has their own worries, everyone has their own hardship, but things will always get better. And these things may seem like a worry now, and they certainly are a worry, but in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, in a decade's time, they may be something that you look back on and think that was the part and that was the moment that actually made me the success that I am. So I do worry about people, but things will always get better.
Is just talking about the growing up where you grew up. If you could expand a little bit more on it,
Yeah.
I think that would be quite an interesting part of the video. Just basically a brief overview of what it was like growing up. You said like knocking on your neighbour's door for sugar and milk and stuff like that. Yeah, if you just expand on that a bit.
Growing up in Tigers Bay, rough area, working class area, where people they knocked next door neighbour's door, looking to borrow sugar, looking to borrow milk, or looking to borrow a couple of tea bags. This was my life. I also grew up in Tigers Bay when it was the time at the back end of the Troubles, so living on an interface in a loyalist area. I didn't see it happen, but I saw the aftermath of a kid blowing himself up with a pipe bomb. I saw buses being hijacked, parked across my street and set on fire. I seen people shooting at cops and army with guns. I seen people shooting at Republicans and nationalists with guns. I seen petrol bombs. I seen things you shouldn't see as a kid. But that was, for me, that was life, and that was just something that I got on with, and it didn't seem alien or unnatural for me. I wouldn't like my kids to live in that now, but that was just my life. That's what I knew, living in Tigers Bay. It was exciting. It was exciting living that. You're living in literally a war zone, but for me it was exciting. I'm not going to say I liked it, but it was just normal life for me.
You say it was normal. Like, I know there was like a huge fear about like car bombs and stuff at the time.
Yeah.
Was that not something that like used to run through your mind as a kid?
But I used to see it. Yeah, car bombs didn't really run through my mind because my family never had a car, so I was all right. But used to see bomb disposal, kind of robots, army robots, like setting off bombs and stuff, and suspicious devices. That happened in my street, like, constantly. I seen people who were being kneecapped and stuff for doing things they shouldn't have been doing in the area. Yeah, you're worried about things. A big worry for me was, so sometimes being from Tigers Bay, you would have had to drive through the New Lodge, the Republican area, to get into Belfast city centre. Sometimes we get a taxi in, as we didn't have a car growing up. And I used to always have this fear that if this taxi breaks down, we are fucked, like we are going to be killed. It was a stupid thing to think, but that's what I thought. And it was my mentality and my mindset at that time was, I'm from Tigers Bay, I'm a loyalist, everybody in the New Lodge hates me, and if something happens and I get into the New Lodge in a compromised position, I'm dead. It's stupid. It's a stupid mindset, but that's what I thought of growing up as a kid.
Sorry, last two is, you say, I think you painted an image in my head. You didn't have a car.
Yeah.
Was it financially, was it difficult growing up, like, for the family?
Yeah, financially it was difficult for everyone. You know, my mum and dad always worked and always provided for us. My dad just didn't drive, walked everywhere, got buses everywhere, got taxis everywhere. It wasn't like we were skint. We were okay living in a working class area. But I suppose living in Tigers Bay and living in other working class areas in Belfast, it's financially difficult for everybody, and that's just the way it was.
And the last one is just, you've painted an image in my head. You said you went for a run last night, thinking of your next fight.
Yeah.
We did a video a while back on Floyd.
Yeah.
He's I'm a one-man army. He's running along, and it's like he's really like laser focused when he's doing this run.
Yeah.
Would you expand on what that's like when you're on your run and you've got no music in and
Yeah.
you're thinking about your next thing? Like, is it just for this next fight, or have you done that multiple times?
No. So yeah, when I run without music, I've done it a few times. So it's not just for this next fight. I've done it for previous fights. And you're focused on the opponent, and you're kind of one-track mind, constantly focused. I'm thinking about not only Jamel Herring, I'm thinking about walking to the ring. I'm thinking about different shots that I think are going to work against him. I'm thinking about shots that I think he's going to throw and things that he's going to try on me, and what I'm going to do to counteract that. So it's a real, your mind is a crazy thing. Like, all these mad things creep into your mind all the time, but it's about keeping that one-track mind, single-minded, and focused on the objective. But I'm doing it now for Jamel Herring. I've done it previously for other opponents. I've done it for issues in my personal life that maybe aren't going well. Your mind's a very strong tool, and I think if you're strong-minded and you have a strong will and determination, you can do so much in life.
Wicked, man.
All right?
Yeah. You happy? Very happy, yeah.
Sound.
That's one of my favourites, man.
No, happy days. That was good.